Greetings, dear colleagues. Welcome on the first event from our cycle Communities of the Future, Possibilities for the Children. That is the platform for communication between people, government, and the parliament. And here we are going to discuss the issues related to the efficiency of the government. Today we are going to discuss the formation of the budget declaration 2027-2029, people-centered approaches to state and local policy. When typically speaking of the budget declaration, we are using the features, but features are just the tool. There are people behind it, people, veterans, IDPs, and everyone who is in difficult conditions. The organizer of this event, All-Ukrainian Association of United Territorial Communities, and that are the ones who feel the first when we lack resources. Together with association, this platform is organized by our partners UNICEF office in Ukraine, the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and Decentralization Portal. People-centered is not just a term, it's more kind of approach. First to see the person, the real need, and after that, for this specific need to adjust the policies, the mandate, resources, and not the other ways. And for the Rada communities, it means the real possibility to provide high-quality service for the ministries. It means the quality of their policies and whether it is reachable for the people. And for the parliament, there are the laws which make this responsibility feasible. And the budget declaration is formed years ahead. And today we have the opportunity to have an impact on how these years are going to be. Among our representatives, we have the representative of UNICEF, the Ministry of Social Policy, the Ministry of Finance, Budget Committee of the Parliament, the Social Policy and Veteran Policy committees, local authorities, regional development, and the heads of the Ramadas, the heads of the association, and also the partners of UNICEF in Ukraine. So among speakers, we have both the ones who are forming the policy and also those who are implementing it in the fields. We will have a moderated discussion. We will have 4 informational blocks, and in the end, we will have questions from the audience and also online. For online, we had more than 500 representatives from 322 Rada communities from all parts of Ukraine. We are very glad that you are with us, and we hope that you're going to be active. And in the end, we expect good, fruitful suggestions for the budget declaration. And with this, I would like to invite the head of All-Ukrainian Association of United Territorial Communities, Alexander Kurinny. Greetings, dear colleagues. Maybe that is the first time when I'm going to use the notes, because we have already discussed the budget declaration for 2027-2029, and there are some certain provisions, and I'm afraid that I will forget something because it's very important. So we are starting the new platform, which we created in order to before we make the decisions, because budget is something that gives a high quality services to all people, and quite often we do not have strategic approach. We are doing everything in the last minute, and I would like to be the happy person who is able to live at least 2-3 years without significant changes in the budget. And therefore, we thought, like, what kind of format can help us to make our budgets better? And the format where all the participants who, as we say, stakeholders, who can check some bottlenecks, some general things to discuss, to meet, and therefore I would like to thank the UNICEF office in Ukraine, because they are the ones who are supporting children-oriented and children-centered and people-centered approach is something we are working on, and that is something that is going to define our policy and our decisions as a association. I would like to thank our old great friends, so that is Ukraine Crisis Media Center, decentralization platform, because you are delivering the message. And I think that is the idea we will work on with the government, with the parliament, with everyone who is a part of this sphere. And therefore, we will have, in crisis situation, considering the war, we will have the best possible product, our budget. Whatever anyone says, I'm talking on behalf of Ramada communities. I can say that whatever we do in the Cabinet of Ministers or in the Parliament, it is still to be implemented on the site. Educational, social, any kind of services are provided in communities, in Ramadas where people reside. And the members of the local councils and the executive authorities, they are the ones who have to implement it in the framework of the legislative acts we are making. And this work in advance, joint visions, is something that is really important, because that is not just a trend, It was... people were saying, like, people-centered, children-oriented, and now it's not just a trend, that is a necessity. Today we live in the times when the budget system is not stable, let's be honest. Every day we face the risks which can change our work 180 degree, strikes, destruction of the infrastructure, hospital damage, and therefore we are not able to provide high-quality service. It's something that is taking away our resources. Also IDPs. Nobody was ready for this, but that is a necessity. We Ukrainians have to be helping Ukrainians, for them not to leave abroad but to stay in Ukraine, because that is development. We are talking about energy. It seems like Ormuz channel is so far from us, but nevertheless there are so many issues. We have the contracts for the buses, school buses, and they are facing problems. So that should be something not just formal when we are just talking and we're taking down notes, but it has to be the dialogue. And it has to be not the only dialogue we have. And I hope that the budget declaration is something we are going to discuss quite a lot, and we will have high-quality solutions. Dear friends, key suggestions which our association has, we have discussed it. Sometimes especially the budget topics take a lot of time, but it's okay, let's be honest. Even today, right now, even the neighborhood communities can have absolutely different opportunities and positions. And when we are doing something, some race or something like that, I think that we should move away from it. We have to be talking about the capacity of each specific Ramada at this specific time. And this time is not an easy one at all. And that is something that I mentioned in Strasbourg on the high-level dialogues. I mentioned it on the Congress of Ramadas. And I'm telling that all the time, because that should be the first year when we shouldn't have these kind of games, 60 or 40% tax. And I even suggested to have it in the tax code, because it's kind of distracting. Let's discuss it, and then maybe we will remove some other taxes. So there should be no decisions which are made alone. So when we are making the decree, when we have the extra expenditures for school, and in this way, we create the political pressure. The budgets are already adopted, so we are talking about the same thing. We are talking about children, education, about social sphere. We are talking about medicine and many other things. So all the decisions, they have to be discussed in advance. They have to be forecasted, because if we are doing it in the way yes, we did it in December, then there is no sense to be talking about 3-year declaration. When you adopt the budget as on time, and then the next day you get the changes, it shouldn't be like that. So speaking of the military fee, yes, indeed, it should be there, but I see no logic that police and state emergency station service, all of them, they have free nutrition for the children, or their parents have statuses, and so many other things. But at the same time, we do not have any budgets. For my small community, that is 70 million every year, out of 240, more or less. And therefore, dear friends, we have to be mentioning that as well. So it's really great that the personal income tax is something that is being discussed in the parliament. Yes, it's not a fast thing, but we have to do our best. The people have to be paying the taxes where they reside. It's great that we have the state monopolies. We have all these things, and it's easier for them to get registered at one place and to work all around the country. So we say that we have horizontal system of equalizing when we have to discuss and to improve the system together. Once again, we should not have changed the budgets in the middle of the year. And if you want to do something like that, then we have to decide who is going to pay for that. If it was adopted when the budget was there, we want to give the access for the Ramadas to the databases. Because, for example, prosecution is in charge because they do not have data and to see who is working there and who is not paying taxes. And we have to have access, and we are talking about digitalization of taxes, and we have to be talking about that. And maybe part of the taxes has to be paid through DA, because not only salaries have to be public, right? Not only the good approach and the monitoring of the budget approval has to be. We have to be paying the taxes the same way, because every hryvnia which is not in the budget, there is also the loss in the budget. And of course, we would like to have the information about the population of our Ramadas to be taken from our databases, because State Migration Service registers, because the other sources are outdated. We actually expect that this platform, this meeting, and the further meetings will be the meetings of the stakeholders, of partners, and that will be horizontal level, that are going to be professional discussions, so the thoughts will be heard, opinions will be heard, and the decisions will be made based on them. And when in the end of the year we will make the decision, we'll be thanking each other, and we will be looking in the future with confidence, because otherwise sustainable local self-governance will not happen. Once again, I would like to thank all of you. I would like to thank you for your support. I would like to thank those who joined this meeting, and we have lots ahead. And hopefully it will bring us to better services for our citizens. So thank you, Mr. Alexander. With this, we start talking about strategic vision and how to make the needs of the children, family, with the mandatory watermark on each budget document. And UNICEF has the unique vision. They can see both global things and also the local pains of the specific Ramada. So let's start with this experience. Today with us we have Paul von Kittlitz, head of the Social Policy Department, UNICEF Ukraine. Mr. Kittlitz, we're talking a lot about people-centered principle, but nevertheless, how should it look in real life when we are talking about planning years ahead, based on the international experience and the developments of UNICEF in Ukraine? What kind of approaches do you use to take into account the needs of the vulnerable people, children, will be useful for Ukraine, for the executive authorities when forming the tax declaration and in the budgets of different levels?
Very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to this event, for giving us a chance to contribute and to support the event. There's several things that I would like to welcome that I think are very positive. The first one is the participatory approach. I think it's very valuable to have an approach to not just the annual budgetary process, but the budget declaration, which is, of course, a 3-year midterm planning process, to have a participatory approach to that, to involve stakeholders before the budget declaration is drawn up. And we have to thank all the partners for attending this process, and we can, I think, thank our partner, the Ministry of Finance, in advance for listening and for taking stakeholders' views on board in this planning process. So that is the first thing I would want to welcome. The second thing is, as you are framing this event today, which is, as you're calling it, a human and child-centered approach to budget decision-making. That is precisely the approach that UNICEF tries to support, that UNICEF proposes, which is to put the child, yes, because we are UNICEF, but really to put the people at the center of the planning process, which means to put people's needs, and these are needs at the Gromada level, these are needs at the ground level, at the basis of the budget planning process. So that is a very different approach to an asset-based process, for example, where you decide how much will a new bridge cost, how much will a new school cost, how much will a new community center or a youth center cost. These are much more straightforward ways of planning, much simpler project management. But of course, the risk then is that you miss the opportunity to actually understand the needs of the people on the ground, and that you effectively allocate the very, very limited resources to those needs, and to make sure that we are supporting those who need our help the most. So that is something very much to be welcomed, and we are on this journey together with all of you. We are here to support you in gradually transitioning to that process. That is not something that will happen overnight. This is decades of legacy of how budget planning has always worked. So to move from one model to another, that, as I said, is not going to happen overnight. We have lots of complicating factors in this process that we should acknowledge. We should acknowledge that this is a challenging process anyway, but it is particularly challenging because of the circumstances that we find ourselves under. Ukraine is at war for 4 years now. It is a full-scale war. You have, at the same time as you have a war and a humanitarian situation, you have a slow recovery in parts of the country. You have enormous expectations on the country from the European Union and other partners to reform very systematically, very deeply. Those are enormous challenges, and they are all happening at the same time. And then the biggest challenge of all of them is that you have enormous fiscal pressure. So the pressure on the budget is indescribable. Of course, everybody has their eyes on Brussels and what will happen in Brussels and what will happen to the 90 billion. So we need to understand, and we need to acknowledge that this is not easy, and that there are no easy solutions. Now, let me just very quickly say something about our partnership with the Gromada and with the association, which we're very grateful for and which we think is very important, and a little bit about why UNICEF is even engaged in this field. So our partnership with the association is because, as I was saying, people are really not seen at the central level, at the central administrative level. People's real needs are where they are in the communities on the ground. And in fact, those people who we want to put at the center, which are the vulnerable people, which are the people with not very good access to services, which are the people for whom access to resources is much more challenging, those people are often going to be in very small gromadas, in very rural gromadas, They may not be in the big cities. So that is why we need to work with a partner like the association, which has many hundreds of gromadas that they are working with, so that if we come up with tools to assess those needs, to cost social services, for example, for children, for neglected children, for the elderly, whether it is about education or health or child protection or social protection, we need to help many, many, many gromadas, and so we work with the association so that we can reach as many as we possibly can. And I think we're off to a good start in this partnership. We've already trained thousands of budget planners in gromadas through workshops that we have done together. So that is why we have this partnership, and we appreciate it a lot. Now, why is UNICEF in this space? You may associate us with humanitarian support on the front line. You may see UNICEF labels, logos on trucks, on generators, on things like that. But actually, the long-term support, how we can have the most effect, is if we can try to drive resources to children. If we can make sure that when budgets are planned, when resources are allocated, it is with a view to creating the best possible future for the children of this country. And those are not humanitarian resources. Those are tax grivnas. And those are international financial institutions resources, European Union resources. So it's very important to have these conversations about priorities, about planning, about putting people at the center. So that's why we are in this, and we're very happy to be supporting this process. Thank you very much.
Я дякую, пане Кітліц, і дякую.
Thank you, Mr. Kitlitz, and thank you, Mr. Alexander. With this, I would like to invite you to join the participants of the event in the audience. You have shown a good vector. Children-centered budgeting, people-centered budgeting. It's not just the residual principle, that is the strategic investment in human capital. In fact, we've heard about the international standards and the vision of how everything should be in order for the system to be working for the people. And with this, we are moving to the second block of our discussion. Here we gather the representative of the key ministries, the parliamentary committees, which are the ones who are creating this declaration for 2027-2029. Communities quite often say that we were given the authority, but we were not given the resources. And as you know, the government strives for balance and efficiency. And today, we will try to find the cross point where the state policy becomes the real service in the community. And our speakers have already joined this panel. And if you don't mind, dear speakers, I will introduce you when I will be giving you the floor. And let's start with executive power. Let's be honest, we want to be talking not about everything. We want some solid decisions. And therefore, I suggest 3 questions. Each of you will hear and knows where they have the mandate, and if I miss something important, you have the right to say that we have forgotten something. And then the question for the executive authority: what are the social priorities are key to enshrining in the budget declaration for 2027-2029? How to ensure consistency between delegated powers and actual funding at the Gromada level? And the main thing, what mechanism should we implement for the obligations, liability of the government have to be fixed on the paper. And let's start with the Ministry of Finance. Today online we have Svetlana Boyko, Director of the Department of Budget Expenditures of the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine. Ms. Svetlana, I can see you. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you. Greetings, and please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Greetings to our participants. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I would like to start my speech with the beginning with how everything should start. So, as of known, the main foundations of the tax declarations are identified by the tax code, by the Article 33, according to which we are operating. And I would like to highlight first that the budget declaration is a document of the midterm planning, which identifies only the grounds for the tax policy. And on this stage, the Minister of Finance is making the approximate income, assess the approximate income and expenditures and possibilities. The budget declaration is just the intention for the midterm. In fact, it does not include the list of the measures and mechanisms of its implementation. It will be identified by the law on the taxes, and that is something that has to be taken account. It's just an intention. We just started the work on this process, and now we have the calculations taking account the macro prognosis. Macro forecast impact, the possibility of implementation, but in the framework of this work, we also paid a lot of attention to social sphere. And I would like to underline that social sphere is one of the main people-centered and children-centered spheres which support our citizens, and all the expenditures go either for the people or to the families with children. And in this direction we also work, and we pay the relevant attention to this scope of work. I would like to underline that social sphere is the second one by the number of the expenditures after the military sector, and these expenditures will continue in the next year. That is a liability of the government, and that is, first of all, the support of our citizens who are in difficult life situation, the continuation of the program, payment programs, pension programs, and that will be also the support for the families with children. And according to the new legislation on the support of the parentship and demographic situation, that is the program support of the IDPs, the program support for the people in poverty, subsidies, and we are working on all of these programs to remain in the future and not to be suspended, and to support our citizens in the future. Another main direction, as it is mentioned in the program of the government, and it is also in the yearly declaration, and we have an intention to work with the Minister of Social Policy on this, so that is the improvement of this work, and making it address support them not because of the status, but according to their needs. As for the tasks in this area, we hope for the fruitful cooperation with the Ministry of Social Policy in order to identify the needs, to make them more clear, the ones we can work with, but we have to understand that these tasks have to be in the framework of the available financing for them, not just to be declarative. Besides that, I would like to draw attention to another thing. As Mr. Paul said, Mr. Kitley said that people live in the regions, for example, and they need support. And not especially when we are talking about the martial law time, the challenges are very different, and people require immediate solutions, decisions, some new approaches, and we have the Ministry of Social Policy in the framework of the implementation of the pilots, the provision of various social services. And now we have 8 pilots, and in the budget for 2026, so we had a 33% higher budget, and that is the support for the Armadas to provide social services, and now it is more than 2 billion hryvnias. We are talking about social services to the orphans, supported by the local budgets, that is early intervention, that is the support for the children with disability, that is also the service which is ongoing for many years, the resilience service supported by UNICEF, and also the complex of other services for the IDPs. Another thing I would like to underline that accordingly, in the law on social services, we have the term national services. The peculiarity is that they have to be financed from the state budget. In the law on the state budget for 2026, so we had the line that according to the pilots, the Ministry of Social Policy has to identify the complex of these measures which have to be financed from the state budget, and that is going to be financed by the state budget, and also our citizens will get these services where they reside. In the end of my speech, I would like to say that in the sphere of social services, it would have been the previous speakers said it really great, and I agree with that we have to assess the needs of the people. And that is a key thing, because now we have to assess the needs. We have to assess the needs of our citizens and identify the ways to satisfy their needs. We are ready to join this process because we consider that social protection and the support of citizens are very important. We are ready to listen to all the suggestions. If possible, we will take them in account, and in order to overcome all the negative factors, with a future opportunity to use available financial resources in order to resolve the problem of the citizens, in order for every hryvnia to serve our people. Thank you very much for the attention. Ms. Svetlana, thank you very much for finding the time, considering the time you have. And with this, I would like to invite your colleague, Alexander Muro, the Director of the Department of the Policy of Inter-Budgetal Relations and Local Budgets from the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Alexander, can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you. I hope you hear me as well. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to join this kind of discussion around a very important document, budget declaration. Well, first of all, budget declaration, that is the first stage of the budget process, so we have just started. Daily challenges require from all of us the strong support of each other and union. The fundamental principle of subsidiarity remains an important aspect of the budget policy. I would like to thank Association for the definitions on association and local self-government, the suggestions for the tax declaration to be considered as original interest. We studied them, and today we have heard the essence of these suggestions. We studied them, and we are taking them in account. Today, the budget declaration process is in the beginning, so we are just measuring the approximate numbers. We are preparing the letters for the chief operators of this process, and we remain the principle of the midterm planning. Methodological base was updated with emphasis on it is more children-oriented and people-oriented. And that is something that the previous speakers mentioned. The budget process during martial law, it's always a balance between the needs of the army and survival of the people. And at the same time, we have to take into account that financial capacity of the budget system becomes more and more vulnerable. Nevertheless, our main task is finding the balance between child and people when they can get high-quality services in their communities. Finally, I would like to say that the Minister of Finance is ready for a systematic constructive dialogue to develop the joint decisions on many issues which have accumulated in the social sphere, social provision, level of taxes, but nevertheless, I would like to say that this kind of process, this kind of dialogue, should not be limited with financial resources, searching just the financial resources. I think that Hromadas also have to be thinking how they can increase the income, how can they expand their capacity, and also how to use the budget funds more efficiently. Once again, I would like to thank all of you. I stay with you. I'm going to listen to you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. And I think that your recommendations for the communities so that you have to enlarge resource bases are very important. And I would like to remind you that you got the suggestions from the association. Do you agree that it's really actually easier when you just get the suggestions and you just form them as declaration? That it's just my thoughts a lot. I'm very sorry, but it's too easy. Yes, Mr. Alexander. So with this, we are moving further. We have the Director General of the Directorate for Strategic Planning and Policy Coordination of the Ministry of Social Policy, Family and Unity of Ukraine, Serhiy Sobchuk. The floor is yours. Greetings, dear colleagues. Greetings, dear representatives of the territorial Hromadas. Indeed, the budget declaration is not just figures, it's a vision of the development of the state. That is how we perceive the development of the human potential in the future, and therefore it is important to be more focused and to understand what are our approaches and to identify the priorities of the state. And today we've mentioned children-oriented approach, and indeed the right of each child to grow in family surrounding, for their rights to be protected. Well, we see that it has to be based on the prevention. And the key element for this prevention element is preserving the biological family. It can be achieved through two interrelated elements. The first one is timely identification of the families who are in difficult life situation, and second, provision of access to different social services in order to have high quality, fast and complex approach, and to help them to overcome these difficult situations and to prevent withdrawal of the child from the family. In order to achieve this target, we can see that it is very important to provide the key social services for the families with children. We have identified 8 of these services, so that is sustainability, social support for these families, early intervention, support during inclusive education. So that are the basic services which help the family to overcome difficult life situation. In case if it is impossible to preserve these family surrounding at this moment, we have the guardians for the children. So short-term form of family substitution where child gets a family until their parents are not cannot perform their parental obligations again. If it is impossible to preserve the biological family, we understand that many children are becoming orphans, so the state priority is to develop the sustainable family forms of education and adoption. Namely, that is the development of the family type houses that are caregiving services, and of course the priority are grandfathers, grandmothers, other relatives, the adoption families, and of course the institute of the adoption. The next stage to support these families, and probably one of the key tools to do so, that is the enhancement of the intersectoral support, multidisciplinary teams who together can achieve our main target faster and easier. The next element and the priority is probably the support of the internally displaced people, IDPs. And we can see that it's the kind of move from the reactive response to the sustainable support and integration of the people in the community, in the new community. And in this case, the policy should be consistent of two main problems and needs which occur. First of all, the provision of the housing for these people, and the second stage is employment. In order to improve the situation with housing, in the state budget, we already have some certain financial resources. For this year, we have 1 billion hryvnias for the provision of the repairs, reconstruction of the places, residences for the IDPs. Also 50 million are foreseen to procure the houses in the villages for the IDPs, and that is partially the tool which allows to do it fast, efficiently, to give them these tools, to give them housing. Also in 2025, we have implemented few pilots on the provision of the nurse services for the internally displaced people. And here we need the support of the communities and their engagement in order for more medical services to join these medical problems and for them to improve the quality of these services. And also a big number of the work is conducted in the temporary residence locations, and there we have to be interacting and to be improving the access of the people to the services and to provide the social management in order to provide fast needs assessment and respond of the state and local authorities to the needs which one has. So in this way, we will be able to spend less resources, less finance, and achieve our main goal. Besides that, another important thing is the support of the people with disabilities, especially when it comes to employment. We know that there is a law on the support on people with disabilities, and the 4% requirement is also the tool which we can use to create the opportunities, to create the need. And beside that, for them, it is important to provide personal assistance services, the services for employment, the smart adjustment, because that are the tools which how we can help them to integrate faster in this workflow. And of course, the block implemented together with Territorial Radas, with local budgets, that is the provision of social services. And in fact, we have quite a lot of them, and just this simple payment, it cannot resolve the problem which one has. Only together with social service focused on the resolution of the problem which one has. Only in this way we can support integration of the person, of the individual in the society. So I guess that is the end, just not to take time from the other speakers. And indeed, our main objective is to provide the opportunities for human development and human-centric approach in each element, and it is possible only when acting together. Thank you, Mr. Serhiy. And today with us we have another minister, Ms. Lyudmila Dementsova, the Deputy Director of the Department of Multi-Level Governance, Ministry of Communities and Territorial Development of Ukraine. Greetings, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this very important event, because before forming the budget declaration, we have the opportunity to meet and to discuss what should be in the budget declaration and how it has to be regulated, how it should correlate, how it should work together. I would like to thank the UNICEF program because for many years you systematically support Ukraine, and this is at most important for us now. You know that our children lost their childhood. Almost every night, children from different regions of Ukraine, they spend their nights in the shelters. At the same time, in daytime, when they come into schools, to kindergartens, for a long time, they have to stay in the shelters again. And that is really terrible when you leave this. We are developing, we're moving further, and our children learn as well. And they are also planning their future. They are studying languages, they are striving to become better, and they are sharing their experience with whole world. Our children are fantastic, and we have to encourage them to develop and for them to share the experience. As it was already mentioned by the colleagues from the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine or from the Ministry of Social Policy, unfortunately, majority of our resources we have to spend on defending ourselves from the enemy. We know that more than 60% of our state budget has to be spent on countering Russian Federation, which attacked us, unprovoked attack, which happened in 2022, and we are countering them. And that is, kind of requirement, existential requirement, something vital. We are giving all the resources in order to survive, in order to continue forming our future, to be independent, to be strong, to be capable. I'd like to underline a few important aspects which had to be taken in our tax declaration. As Ms. Boyko has mentioned, she already underlined that, first of all, we need to clearly understand what social services are guaranteed to each person, no matter where this person resides. Either it's village or city, territorial Rada, the service has to be of a high quality wherever it is received in any type of settlement. And depending on that, the financing depends on this, and it has to be both on the state level and on the local level. We have lots of quarrels regarding whose service it is. The state budget, and it can be financed from the state ones, or it's the mandate of the local authorities, and it has to be financed from the local budget, dear colleagues. That are our people. That is our joint problem, and we have to interact. Something can be financed from the state budget, something is co-financed from the local budget, and of course there should be balance. And we underline that anyways we cannot rely everything on the local self-government. We appreciate local self-government because you are providing lots of services, and probably there is no other country in the world where self-government is providing so many services: medical, education, social protection, social provision services, housing services, and many, many others. But we have to stay together. We have to work together. We have to support each other. And the colleagues from the Ministry of Finance say that thank you that we have it, but we have to discuss it and we have to embed it into the tax declarations. Also, I would like to underline, if you feel that we need the fair formal distribution of these kind of services, in this case, we need to work on that as well. Beside that, Mr. Alexander Moroz has emphasized that we have to be working on increasing the incomes of the local budgets, local incomes, and good administration of the local taxes. That is something we have to be working on. You know that the Ministry of the Development and Regional Development, they have developed the pilot, and we would have deeply appreciated if during the next meeting we could have discussed this matter, and in this case, Hromadas which are capable, they could have administrated their own taxes on the higher level, and in this case they can increase the incomes to their budgets. Also, I would like to underline another thing. Recently, I had a talk with a few Hromadas, and we were asking them, what is important for you when you are developing cooperation with international partners when it comes to social services? And one of the territorial Hromadas, by the way, from Kyrvogradska Oblast, Hyvrenska Hromada, said a very interesting thing. They said, we're providing services. We are trying to provide them on the highest level, but we lack social taxi. And it would have been really great if we had the cooperation between territorial Hromadas based on the law on the territorial Hromadas cooperation. We, together with few other Hromadas and with the support of donors, could have procured these kind of social taxes to maintain them jointly and to share the expenditures. So to maintain it jointly, to have the joint utility company for these social taxes. So these kind of ideas, they occur on this interaction, cooperation, and it would have been great to implement them. So I'm not going to take too much of your time, and I would like to say that the Ministry of the Development of Community and Territorial Development of Ukraine, we support the development of territorial communities. We are ready to support this process. We are ready to provide high-quality services on the territory of the Hromada communities, and we will deeply appreciate this kind of cooperation. Ms. Ludmila, thank you very much. So we've heard the representatives of the ministries, everyone who is responsible for the policy in their domain, but any kind of policy, children's, veterans policy, in the end of the day, it comes to what is written in the law. So now we will see the budget declaration with the eyes of those who are making the budget. So we invited the representatives of the key committees of the parliament. Depending on their synergy, Hromadas will get not only mandates, but real money to implement this mandate. Dear members of the parliament, two general questions to you. Each of you will recognize who is responsible for what, and what are the concrete changes require legal regulation for the social liability to be priority in the next 3 years, and how on the legislative level we can implement the golden principle of decentralization mandate. Delegated authority is supported by the budget, especially when it comes to social sphere. And first of all, I would like to invite the member of the parliament, the head of the Committee on Social Policy and the Protection of the Veterans' Rights, Ms. Galina Tretyakova. Thank you very much for this invitation. Everyone was saying that we have to centralize everything, not decentralize, but centralize. That is just a small remark. We are in charge of 3 policies. That is a veteran policy for the participants of the military actions, and the families of the fallen. The second policy is the employment policy. If we are talking about the first constitution article of the Constitution, it is said that we are social state. In the Article 1 of our Constitution, it is written that we are not only a social country, but also constitutional. It means that we have equal rights, and we are not building socialism here, communism. And if we consider what is social state is the type of the state which is developing dignified conditions of living. And at the same time, the Constitutional Court of Ukraine did not provide us. Let me remind you that in 2018, 142 parliamentaries made the request to the Constitutional Court. It is mentioned in preamble of the Constitution of Ukraine. And after that, it is not mentioned. Article 48 says about the satisfactory level of life, that is food, clothing, and roof. But at the same time, Constitutional Court does not say so. They say that the Parliament doesn't need it for the activities. For 3 years, this request was in the Constitutional Court. So we are developing our policy and how we are developing the dignified conditions of residence. It is important to know in the context of the declaration. So what are the main disadvantages of the tax declaration? We see which the committee is talking about. First of all, our budget does not include social protection. Yes, we understand that 466 billion, Ministry of Social Policy, then Ministry of Education, then Ministry of Healthcare, that is the priority which is changing from time to time, and at the same time, if we consider all the funds of the Ministry of Social, that is 1,260 billion. So that are just 466 is just from the state budget. The rest, the rest is social. Social protection, and I can say that quite often the government is using previous side of these funds in order to cover their own needs. So typically they have the social nature, but at the same time we do not have in the tax declaration of all the public funds is not available. We can call it the reform of the public finance. We cannot see the income of the other entities which belong to the state, except for the National Bank of Ukraine, that are also public funds, which do not participate, and they remain outside of our attention and the Parliament of Ukraine, because these documents, both in the State Declaration and the budget, are not provided. The second disadvantage of our budget planning, and the main one, is that there are the approximate thresholds for the budget and social security, and they are not fulfilling the financing of the needs in the laws and in the new programs implemented by the government and the Parliament of Ukraine. Meaning that if we consider all the obligations, fulfilling all the obligations on social policy, which we have quite a lot in our legislation, with the funds, which are the second budget in the state, is impossible. What does it lead us to? It leads us to 768,000 court decisions which are not fulfilled. The European Court on Human Rights paid attention to that, and the debt is more than 100 billion hryvnias, and no programs to overcome the debt of Ukraine. The budget declaration does not suggest. Not enough funds. At the same time, this distribution suggested by the court system leads to the situation, for example, let's take the pension fund as an example. Pensioners get 255 hryvnias, so that is the smallest pension, till 240,000 hryvnias. So the difference in solidarity system, once again, I would like to underline, solidarity system is 94 times. If you divide these numbers, calling these systems solidarity system is something that I cannot do without my fingers crossed. Another thing which we can have in the budget declaration, that is the extremely low minimum funds for living. So it started before us, it started in 2016, and I think that those who were in charge of budget planning at that time definitely know that the payment in the anti-corruptional court, the chamber, so they were stick to the minimum payment. Before that, they were sticking to the minimum salary. And minimum salary, the ratios were very high, and it was artificially lowered. And in order to increase the growth of the minimum salary, they have stick to another standard. So they were looking to another standard, and they found the only thing like the living minimum. Considering the fact that this kind of model is decreasing the minimum wage, they couldn't find a better solution than to stick to stop growing the minimum payment. And that is one of the key indicators, minimum salary, and they have decreased the minimum living payment. So minimum living payment is 3 times lower than it should have been. It means that we're living in the market economy, right? In the market economy, social policy means, first of all, to be able to provide the possibility to have high level of income in their work and life. If the person is not able to do that, or is in difficult life situation, in this social policy in market economy has to support this kind of person in order to get him or her out of this situation, to help them to get to autonomous, independent life. And by the way, dignified life condition starts with one being able to live independently and in a dignified way. The social policy is on the third or fourth level, the support of the state, so the support of the other taxpayers to their co-citizens in order to bring them to dignified life. That is also something we can say about housing, and therefore minimum payment is hurting the vulnerable categories. And it's quite weird to see when prosecutors get 140,000, 180,000 hryvnias pension, and those who were not able to find their place in market conditions, 200, they get much less. So this distribution, when poor pay in order for the rich to become richer, it is very unfair. Budget declaration has to regulate it, because fairness is a very big revolution, a big energy which brings to revolution. The coefficient Gini is the inequality. So in Ukraine, this Gini factor is 0.3. It's very close to revolution. The social policy is redistribution on macroeconomic level is 0.3 and higher. In this case, there is the precondition for revolution. Do we need it right now during the war? It means that redistribution has to be more fair. Budget declaration is something that doesn't foresee that, where the measures for forming this budget declaration do not foresee it. Another disadvantage I would like to underline. The colleague from the Ministry of Social Policy started to say that we have the reform of social policy when we were paying only money, and in fact the state was saying that is the money which we give to you, but we do not have infrastructure to serve you. We do not have the opportunity to have courses for the family which has the child with disabilities. We do not have infrastructure in order to serve you well. And therefore, we were not developing the infrastructure. And social services, which has to enhance the payments, they appeared only in 2021. And until now, they are being developed. And only in 2025, we adopted the law on all Ukrainian social services. It means that we started to think how and who and what kind of services has to be procuring with the all Ukrainian budget, and what is the local mandate. So it seems like a very simple thing to do. The rules for all Ukrainian for the government and how it has an impact on local autonomy and where the community is here. This event is organized by Territorial Rada, and Rada has to be the front office to accept the veteran, the person in difficult life situations. So Rada is the one who has to be the center. And just recently, the center is for the social policies was in the district administrations. So there are the communities where there is capable people who are the front office of which meet people. Let me talk about these front offices. Front offices are All-Ukrainian, and also there are front offices which has to be meeting people. Let me call the offices which we have and the number of the people who work there. So pension fund, 24,000 people. They have more than 92,000 type 24,000 people around the world. The employment center, 7,000 people. Just to compare the amounts of the financing of the pension fund, that is more than 1 trillion, and the employment center, job center, on the level of 17 billion. Why do we need 7,000 people in this case? But we have to understand that 7,000 people who, from the perspective of the policy of employment, who can be providing services to the people, the social protection. We already said that they are in the process of organization, around 7,000 around district administrations. At the same time, we do not have the departments in the Rada communities, and for that we need to divide the authorities. That is something that we are doing together with Ms. Olena Shulyak and her committee. That are the things which we started to discuss: veteran policy, social policy, and employment policy, which we started to discuss 4 or 5 years ago during the reform of decentralization. It was not foreseen. And in this way, we have to understand what are the own authorities, which the Ministry of the Ministry was mentioning. So the pension policy. So that is something that cannot be delegated or to be procured from Rada authorities. And what do we mean by local authorities? For example, in budget code, we do not have the one who is responsible for transporting. It is said that local authorities can be financing, but they can be not financing that. So the redistribution of the taxes is something that is not in the tax code, and it has to be resolved in the tax declaration. So a fund for the protection of the people with disabilities, the in charge of prosthesis, Ukrainian Veteran Fund, which helps to organize businesses for veterans. So there are veteran spaces, and the specialists on the support, veteran facilitators, veteran spaces, and veteran facilitator. That is a policy which we are implemented in priority of serving the veterans. Without veteran spaces, veterans do not understand that they have to be served first. And finally, I would like to mention the problems of the personal income tax. In the context of the tax declaration, we have lots of reserves, and namely the personal income tax. So first of all, in personal income tax, unlike Europe, the money is not returned to the family. And here we were mentioning people-centered policy. I would like to say that people-centered policy has to be supported by family-centered policy or demographic policy. And the way we live with families and household. And household and family, they have to be in the center of the survival strategy. Yes, everyone is their individual, and every person who has to be protected is individual. At the same time, we Ukrainians have to be considered as households. Household doesn't have even the form and the possibility to declare income without registration of the private entrepreneurs. So what the farmers do, or not farming one, the household which is selling, for example, pickled vegetables, they say like you have to register as a private entrepreneur, and otherwise they cannot legally sell these kind of things in the market. So we do not have this kind of form. The form of the declaration is absent, and of course it has an impact on the personal income, because in any European country, the household has expenditures protected once. It means survival of each individual in the household. And now the survival of each individual in the family, in the household, is 12,000. So this amount is taken onto the state budget, and it has to be returned. They have to be returned not to the Hromada, but to the household, to the breadwinner. Breadwinner, when registered in household, has to know that if one has 3 children, 1 person with disability and 1 unemployed, in this case, for each of them, 10,000 hryvnias is basic. And this person first has to survive, and then Hromada survives, and then the central authorities survive. And how to redistribute that? And therefore, we have to be thinking on how we can redistribute that. Returning the personal income to the IDPs, for example, that is a very normal situation when we can say that the working IDP is not paying. Returning personal income in the frontline territories, so that can be done to the people, that can be the thing which is keeping the people in this region. That is also very important. The personal income tax has to be redistributed in Hromada. If we consider that to be local tax according to the place where one resides and not where one works. And therefore, 36 and 34, it means that the formula we are creating right now is not fair one. And those 64% which we're redistributing, they have to be limited on how we can spend them. For example, for the transportation subsidy, when and how, if there are social services, how much of it. So today we don't have it. Thank you very much. A very interesting thing to listen. So I know that we can have. It's interesting. So if we know all our problems and why we are not resolving it, so that is the general question. And now I should have given the floor to the local authorities, but with Ms. Shulyaka, we decided to have conspiracy, and therefore I'm passing the floor to Dmytro Makysha, People's Deputy of Ukraine, Regional Development and Local Self-Government. Thank you very much. It's interesting to hear the details of this conspiracy after the event. Well, the topic is very interesting. Budget declaration. I actually do not consider it to be something strategic. The strategy, the budget declaration is a form, is a tool for implementation, and there we have different details, because strategic things are general things, where we are going and how do we see it. And the budget declaration is the tool and the explanation how we're going to do that with the details. The declaration is for 3 years. That is a midterm planning, not just for this year, but for 3 next years. We're thinking what will happen after this year will be over, and even after 1 year after that. So we have to understand that, okay, we are not just using money, like let's spend the money in the end of the year because it's the end of the year and let's sign something. So it's not just midterm on paper, but we have to move to the real midterm planning, not declaratively, but it has to be supported by the legislative framework. So that is something we have to come up with for it to be more efficient. Ms. Halina, well, frankly speaking, so much information was provided a very good beginning that majority of these funds do not see when it comes to the social policy, and it is throughout white or red or whatever line. So, and it covers the national level and the basic level. And when all these manipulations start, like getting local self-government and said like, oh, you have money left on the budget, oh, you can be developing this or that. But dear friends, if we open the social component of each Hromada, and if we consider what is Hromada responsible for and how do we spend their money, and calculate all these, taking account all these mandates they have, there will be even the general budget with the protected art provisions will not be enough. So, first of all, we have to see it. Second of all, maybe it's not like first one, but zero level. That is the delegation of the authorities. Because at the place where we have few levels of responsibility, or even on the level of the local self-government, it is like, everyone is relying the responsibility on each other. No, you give me money, you give me money. You just said that you have to be doing that, and the other says like I can be doing, not obliged, and the other says like I have nothing at all written there. And in the end of the day, it doesn't work at all. And once again, let's be honest, it works. It not just doesn't work. It doesn't work the way we want. And of course, who is responsible for that? Typically, it is Hromadas, which are paying for that. And then the other thing, it is also related to the delegation of the authorities. We are talking about authorities, and then with clever face we say that money should follow authorities, and then we say that, okay, in this case everything will work. But no, let's be honest. In fact, it is written that authorities should be supported by funds, but typically it works the other way around. So it is related to what we're discussing. So money is the main thing. The main ministry in Ukraine is the Ministry of Finance, which says, okay, you will have money in this amount, and then correct your authorities, correct your mandate. If you do not have enough money, okay, in this case, if you lack funds, okay, we're going to delegate. But why do we need to delegate? Because both can be doing. So in the end of the day, we have a total mess, and it creates to the lack of implementation. And the irony is that in the end of the day, Hromada is the one who is responsible for everything at the end of the day. So when we are talking about the budget declaration for 2027-2029, any 3 years is possible. Let's start not with figures which have to show on how it has to be implemented, but let's start with what has to be implemented. It has to meet the legislation which already exists, and moreover, the legislation which we're working on in order to improve it, because everyone has to be responsible for what he or she has to be responsible for. And then we can consider whether these funds were allocated fairly, because there will be no end to this story, and will be relying the responsibility. And once again, nobody is going to be willing to be responsible for something. So that is the actual instrument of the so the budget declaration is important, but let's not forget about really important things, which the main idea on how it has to be implemented, legislation, and then the tools to implement it. Thank you. Thank you. With this, I would like to read very fast, not maybe the question, but it's kind of constatation of the fact. I would like the Minister of Finance to begin. The separate provisions on increasing the salaries are nivelating the salary grade and forecast. So for the budget forecast to be efficient, we have to be approving the budgets. And with my pleasure, I would like to invite Ms. Olena Zhliak, the head of the committee, chairwoman of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Committee on Organization, State Power, Local Government, Regional Development and Urban Planning. Let me remind you that the reform of decentralization in Ukraine started more than 12 years ago, on the 1st April 2014. Everyone has celebrated 12 years of the most successful reform, which we like to be telling about to European colleagues, and that is a reform which has to change the life of people for the better. In the concept of the organization of local authorities, which was adopted on the 1st of April 2014 in Ukraine, one of the tasks, Halina, was to fulfill the segregation of the authorities. 12 years passed by, and some simple things were done. Finances are on the side, and the authorities, the mandates, and the resources, but at the same time, unfortunately, no time for more important, more difficult things. So, what is segregation of the mandate? So we can have 3 levels, and you will be happy. But typically, it's quite a difficult thing to do. And it seems to me that for 1 year, we, together with our European colleagues, with all the associations, but by the way, the organizer of this event, the Association of All-Ukrainian Association of Gramadas, we were discussing for 12 years so how should legislation look like in order to fulfill the task which we had 12 years ago. And in April 2026, I think that we had a few very important events. The first one on the 7th of April, Verkhovna Rada has adopted very framework legislation. Not everyone likes it because it's very framework one. But we have to start with somehow, and this step was made. 269 members of the parliament, that are all fractions and groups, they were voting to support this law to finally, on the legislative level, once again, that is something that Mr. Dmytro was mentioning, to start the work in order to resolve a very difficult topic. The first legislation draft law is regarding the general principle, criteria, and if there is a mandate, they have to be supported by the financial resource, and that concerns all the levels and the regional level as well, because so far we have the question on how the regional level functions, and some questions they are the part of the regional level, and some of them, well, sometimes they just forget to send the money. And as for the principles and criteria, we have the own and delegated authorities, and we also have the facultative authorities. So when it is possible to take from the state voluntarily some authorities, and you can even refuse from it. And in order not to have sanctions, and that is the innovation for Ukraine. But I think that we have to find somehow the solution. A separate block adopted in the first reading is regarding our military martial law. We understand that during martial law and full-scale war, the government can delegate different tasks and authorities, but we can see that even if there is something has to be done very fast, still there should be compensation, because that is a resource we are discussing, that is a golden rule of decentralization. as we have oblast council and oblast administration, and in the transit provisions, we can see that until the executive committees are not created, the oblast state administrations are going to perform on their behalf. On the 22nd of April, at the end of the amend period and this is the indicator, this law is the indicator for Ukraine facility. In order for this marker of Ukraine facility to be fulfilled, we have to do another home task, which is not in the first reading, and that is regarding competencies. And so far we have 15 main spheres, and social sphere is one of the key ones, because veteran policy and social sphere are very important. And today in the morning we started to discuss what kind of authorities should be on a few levels. And of course, once again, there is an issue regarding the authorities and spheres of competency of the regional level. And I think that once again, here we'll have very big discussion. And on the 22nd of April, we'll have the committee meeting where we are going to discuss the division of the authorities, and we will be looking for the best solution for the members of the parliament to support with amends this draft law in order for us to be able to fulfill Ukraine facility and to get the money in for the state budget and to fulfill the task which we had in 2014. So I think that that is not the topic for today's discussion. And the division of the sphere of the responsibility, but I would like to invite you for the discussion because we will have quite a hard discussion. Besides that, I would like to say that when this draft law will be adopted, when there will be the amends and divisions, we will have lots of things to be done in the budget code, and our secretariat has calculated that we will have more than 150 acts, but it's really great that this reform has started. Unfortunately, it started very late, and unfortunately, it started because of the pressure of our European colleagues when it is in our obligations. But I think that altogether we will manage it. And a few more words. When we're talking about fine resources, we are namely talking about money, but nowadays, during digitalization time, we should not forget that we have to be given given the access to registers. We are discussing the administration of the local fees, and the first thing we have to start with that is an exchange of information. And therefore, even if we have given the money, but we didn't give the, so to say, the material technical. It's not even we didn't give the digital infrastructure. It will be very difficult anywhere, especially in social one, to provide services with high quality. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Olena, and thank you for the representatives of the ministry. And with this, I invite you to join the audience. Please do not leave us so far, because after this, we will have the heads of the communities, and your participation and respond to their speeches is also very important. So we do understand how difficult it is to balance different categories, different requests, and until on the state level we have the discussion regarding the systematic regulation. The Hromadas have their daily task to fulfill the needs of the people on the level, and therefore the state declaration is first of all the target to plan the support of each family, and that is therefore Mr. Koginy was mentioning it for a few times. Please, we need stability. So with this, the heads of Hromada are already with us, the members of the All-Ukrainian Association of Unified Territorial Hromadas and the representatives of the UNICEF in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you separately when I will be giving the floor to you. Now I'm reading the question for everyone, and after this I'm going to invite you for the floor. So, what are the biggest challenges in funding social services you have in your Hromadas, and what changes in the budget declaration should be in the declarations which will help Hromadas to improve social obligations. So with this, I would like to invite Mr. Mitsuk, the head of Belozerska Hromada. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join this discussion, because I was listening to the parliament representatives and the ministry, and everything is smoothly, but it doesn't work the same way on the ground, because during association meeting we were discussing this and the budget declarations. Our suggestions have to be taken into account, and first of all, that is social protection, and it's not just a provision of social services. And the main thing here is to provide services, which we are providing to the IDPs, veterans, families, which are in critical situation. And therefore, that is the main topic. And in the budget declaration, we have to take into account that we should have the personal income tax all the time for us to be able to plan these 3 years and to understand what can we be doing and what kind of services we'll be providing. And first of all, for the because this number of services is increasing and the money isn't following the service. So there is a suggestion that together with services, we get financing from the state budget, because not all of the Hromadas are able to provide services. So it was said that Hromadas can revise their budgets and services. We can say like 50-50 that there are the Hromadas which lack a specialist, and especially it concerns the services which have to be provided to the veterans and families of the fallen, that are rehabilitologists, psychologists, and that is the most important topic so far. And today we have to take into account in the budget declaration that there should be the subsidized transportation. It is foreseen by the state, but Hromadas are the ones who have to be providing that, and Hromadas are not capable to do that. And also subsidies for communications, connections, and all of this is relied on Hromadas, and Hromadas are limited. The most painful thing so far is land, which has to be in declaration, or maybe a compensation for issuing the documents for the land, because we are not able to give to all servicemen the land. Around 30% in communities is available, and the rest is not available. So the suggestion from association is, first of all, for the budget declaration to take into account, because without social services being provided in the community, that are the main topics, as I would mention. So with this, I would like to ask you to take it into account, please. Thank you, Mr. Volodymyr. And with this, I would like to invite Natalia Petrenko, head of the Luhansk Regional Office of the Association of Autonomous Hromada, head of the Shulginsk Rural Military Administration. Greetings, everyone. And indeed, this event is an event which gives us the opportunity to talk about what is painful. First of all, I would like to thank UNICEF and the platform Decentralization. Without them, there is nothing happening. Because when we have said that our members of the parliament, thank you for staying with us, some of you who are always very curious, who are fighting for our suggestions, and the representatives of the ministries who stay with us. I hope that your headset will be on and they will hear us, because when we are talking that in the beginning of the full-scale war, that was one thing, and we were planning, and nobody expected that it would take so long. And now we understand that almost 170 Hromadas are occupied and that are military administrations. And people from these Hromadas are all around the world. And also the hosting Hromadas, well, the person who left and lost their territory, for me, the most important thing is fair statistics. I want the budget declaration to take into account the updated information from all the levels, and then we'll have unified programs, both local and state ones. Then we will have the vision on what should we spending the money from the local budgets and what we have to be spending from the state budget. Fair statistics regarding the IDPs, because money follows people and not the service. And I want to be taken in account that when people are forming statistics for people, we have to take into account the number of the children. Yes, indeed, we have the contact with the temporarily occupied territories, and when we are suggesting people to get evacuated, especially children, but in the hosting Hromadas, there are no programs to finance it, and the military administrations, unfortunately, have no money anymore from the 1st of January. So when we are suggesting people to leave from the temporarily occupied territories, we cannot suggest them, and the state ones are not in place, and therefore it would have been great to take into account. Another thing I would like to suggest is to take into account the status of the children when enrolling in the university. So indeed, yes, children of the veterans, of the fallen defenders, but also we have the local self-government who were fallen on the working place, and none of them got the status as a person who was on duty, and the number is increasing, and their children have no status. And of course, we would like to have it in budget declaration. If you are talking about children, then yes, indeed, we would like to take it into account as well. Another thing I would like to say that when we are talking about us, the heads of the Hromadas, I feel that after the war, we will be fighting for resources. Resource is not money, resources, people. And when we are saying how we can support economical stability in hosting community, in hosting Hromada, we have to decentralize it more, because economical capable people, they are trying to live in big cities, in Kyiv, in different big cities, and they remain there. And when people come to rural areas or more frontline territories, in order to be closer to home, we have to take into account the that there is a burden of in hosting communities from the IDPs as well. And also another thing, everything we talked about today, of course, we would like for it to be implemented, because only in dialogue you can find this fairness to be heard, justice to be heard, justice to be in movement. And there is a phrase, I would like to say it in Ukrainian, that people is everything. When we are losing our people, and our policy was formed in the beginning of the full-scale war to support those military administrations which were limited, and they had temporary staff, and people are all around, and we didn't preserve these staff. And now, unfortunately, we keep on losing our staff because local expenditures is not enough to cover the expenditures, and hosting Hromadas have no finance anymore to employ our people. Thank you very much. Ms. Natalia, thank you. And with this, I would like to invite Ms. Svetlana Smasheva, head of the Gender Equality Platform of the All-Ukrainian Association of ATCs, head of the Pokrovska Settlement Military Administration. First of all, I'd like to thank for the opportunity, for this unique opportunity, for this platform provided by the All-Ukrainian Association of ATCs, together with the partners who clearly understand and support Hromadas in their vision and understanding of what we are talking about the responsibility which is now on the shoulders of Territorial Verkhovna. I was listening to everyone very carefully. I was listening to key speakers, and I have few, so to say, blocks. Today we were talking about the challenges in financing of social services. And if to be sincere, me as well as my colleagues probably identify the few important things. First of all, it's chronicle lack of financing, something we mentioned today, even though we had speakers who were saying that it's not even a problem because in some cases we have big prophesied. We were saying that in fact the price of social services is much higher than the resources available in Hromadas and which are on the sites. Besides that, we were talking about the standards and their financing. So the state identifies the standards of quality, and that is really good. But financial support of these standards is not supported. So there are no ways to cover these standards. The third thing is rapid increase of demand, and we have to be talking about that because we live during war and we have more veterans, more families in difficult life situations, more IDPs, and that is a new term related to the war. And all of these expenditures now are on the shoulders of Territorial Hromadas. And the fourth thing I would like to underline that is limited flexibility of the budget. So even when we have resources, we cannot relocate it fast. We cannot redirect it where it is the most needed. So that is the first block. The second block I discovered today is what kind of amends to the budget declaration we require. First of all, that is a clear link between authorities and funds. So if one is responsible for the authority, one has to get resources. So that is a synergy of the government and the state. So the second one is formula expenditures. So it shouldn't depend on the negotiations, but on the number of the children really existing in Hromadas. And that is what Ms. Natalia was talking about. We have to be talking about real statistic, the number of service receivers and real social burden. The third one, stability and predictability. That is something that our foreign partners and colleagues from UNICEF were talking about. And the fourth thing is flexibility. Flexibility in the way we use our budget funds. Because Hromadas know the best where the need is. And that is something that was mentioned by UNICEF. And here I would like to underline the key thing. It's not that Hromada is not managing something. The problem is that, as of now, financing has to catch up with reality. And Hromadas do not ask for more money. We are just asking to have predictable system, trust. And I think that are the key messages today. And when we are talking about these decisions, it's not just that we are talking about something abstract. It's about the child which is waiting for the service. It's about the veteran who needs support, about the family, which depends on our decisions today, decisions we make today. And all of them, they come to Hromadas. And on the level of Hromada, we have to be talking about gender-oriented budgeting, on the approach, equal approaches to all the categories who reside in our community. We, as Hromada, we are something people can rely on. But without the changes in the budget declaration, we have a risk and we have responsibility, but we have no capacity. And now, I think that we have the best chance to have the new rules of game for 2027-2029, and to do it in the way for Hromadas not to be surviving but to be developing, and for the social services not to be fixed but to have more comprehensive work, and for people to get assistance on timely manner and not when they get money. And I do understand that we can be talking a lot about understanding, being concerned, but strong Hromada will exist when people will not feel deficit of power. And I think that budget policy now has to become the real tool we were talking about today. Thank you, Ms. Svetlana. And with this, I would like to invite Igor Natusha, head of the Health Care Platform of all Ukrainian associations of AACTs, head of the Komush Zagansk Settlement Military Administration. Let me start. My colleague said that the military administrations do not have money anymore. We have up to 200 military administrations on temporary occupied territories. So we were also against this same kind of thing. So using this opportunity, I would like to say that in the budget resolution for 2027 and the further ones, we have discussed this matter. And when in the end of the year, all the funds are available, which you have available, they are taken from you, how are you going to manage everything freely during the year? So that is just a request. Speaking of the medicine, so let me remind you that we have the primary and secondary line, and if we're talking about decentralization, in 2014-2017, the primary line had the reforms. Everyone has a family doctor, and since birth until the last day on Earth, you have family doctor. And as for the funds, and the capitational quote, so at the moment it is 1,007 hryvnias. And as for the salary of the family doctors, because family doctors work 24/7, the person who leaves this, and we are sick when we want, so you can call at night or whenever, and therefore salary they have like 22,000-30,000 hryvnias for a doctor does not meet the market price. There is the staff potential, which is, we have the deficit of the family doctors. Of course, during wartime, requesting something more, it is difficult, but the family doctor is providing services to the servicemen remotely. So they are still in their declarations, and they are providing the service as good as possible, even remotely. So now speaking of the secondary line, we started to reform it after 2020, and any kind of reform means decreasing, so to say, decreasing the number of the space. So now we have cluster hospitals, and they cluster hospital, they are also present in the small areas, and they have like 50,000 hospital, and there are hospitals which are not in the cluster. They are still budgeted from Hromadas, and in each Hromadas, so medicine is on the second place after education. So we are facing an issue here, and we are discussing it right now with the Ministry of Healthcare. How can we make it happen for it to be under the package of the national, to be covered by the national medical services? So Hromada itself is, so this is something people need. So the reform of the secondary line, I cannot say that it's not high quality, but it cannot help everyone, because geographical, so we're talking about martial law, and we're talking about different things. And of course, the packages in secondary line, it has to be like with the market price, because now utility companies, there are the people, they are managers. and they can manage resources. And that is not the Soviet system where you get what you pay for. But this management has its own cost in order to have more resources for these services to have higher quality. And therefore, finalizing my speech, I would like to say that it shouldn't be done without us. So we are not saying that give us more money, even though we indeed need it. But when we are sitting at one table with everyone, we are talking to these people on the grassroots level in order for you to make less mistakes, because we have to return everything as it used to be. So invite us, please, more often to these kind of round tables, and we will have better legislation and better services. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Igor. And I can see on the screen Ms. Katerina Yamchukova, the acting mayor of Poltava, head of the Veterans Platform Unbreakable Together of all Ukrainian associations of VHS. We are very glad to see you. The floor is yours. And dear colleagues, first of all, I'd like to thank association, because our veteran platform is also here, and we're talking about the budget declaration. It's very hard not to repeat what our colleagues said, and therefore I would like to emphasize the veterans policy. In fact, veteran policy is the policy which is also called the policy of opportunities. I wish all the policies were called the same way, and they shouldn't be the policies of expenditures, but the policies of opportunities, because in fact, the emphasis on veterans have shown all the weak points in Armadas, in the state, the ones we had before that. Every service which is available for veterans, it only shows so in some cases we can see that something was not raised. So the veteran policy is showing the new standard which is needed only by veterans. It is something that everyone needs. And everything we have in the veterans policy, once again, we are talking about reintegration and integration of the veterans. And I can say that in Armadas, we have big libraries with programs. Veterans do not need new programs. We need to revise the ones which already exist and to integrate the needs of the veterans in the programs which already exist. And of course, sometimes in order for this transit period to be good, we have to have some separate veterans policies. But there should be no duplication of the services in education, in medicine, in social policy. It is also very important, in my opinion, to be talking about that we should not separate the veterans policy. We are talking about veteran sport. Our children and our veterans lack high quality spaces. If we had enough of them, would the adaptive sport have the issue about the location for them to be able to continue their rehabilitation? So if we're talking about the issue of veteran policy, that is all the infrastructure of the life. And for me, it has to be everywhere in the declaration, not in one chapter. And that is a position which also manifests some other things. For example, we are talking a lot about our main departments, directions of our work, of our local self-government, but at the same time, we know that everything depends on our taxpayers, on how the budgets are filled in and how we can support them also when it comes to veterans policy, children-centered policies, and it depends on the support of the business. And here I would like to draw attention that there are lots of projects which can be supported inside Armada if the topic of the private communication wouldn't be so difficult. And here we have the partners from UNICEF. I deeply appreciate that you came and that you supported us and helped us to pilot something. But once again, when we're talking about the support of business and the official good ones in the format of win-win veteran policy or any other policies in the Armadas, which are implemented, we have two cases regarding the partnership, and these cases, one of them was implemented during 1 year and is quite regulated, and the other one is still in process, and I do not know whether the entrepreneur will manage it until we will get to the end of this process. So a very good example here is partnership with UNICEF, because I like that they are not just suggesting to implement the initiative service or something else. They already give you the significant support when we are piloting initiative. We have the time to try it. And Armada, in my opinion, is a perfect place. And that is a perfect stage for Armada to catch up with it. So when we see that there is lack of clarity regarding the service and there is no direct obligation, so there is a possibility to implement it by the government or by Armada. So Armada expects it from the state, and state says that it can be provided by Armada, and no one is doing anything. No support for the service at all. I'm very concerned by the number of the services, and I'm concerned about the quality of this service. We have so many of them, and the standards for some of them were not revised for a very long time, and they are not revised until now. It is important because that is a new reality, and I do understand that. Once again, veteran policy is a marker in many cases. Veterans are people who have visible and non-visible disability. That are the people who have needs the other people have. Sometimes when I come to the hospital and I can see what the specialist, the veteran facilitator does, I understand that the person who is on the next bed, who doesn't have the bed, has the same problems. And this person also needs support. So therefore, what I see, we need some supervision of the services. So we need to separate easily this issue of the spending the money on the services. So there are the funds which will not be able to resolve the problem of the people, but they can structurally support or systematically support if we invest them. Not directly, but we invest it to the support of the person. So considering the fact that I know that we are limited in time, I would like to support all the topics raised today, and the topic of the for veteran predictability has to be predicted for everyone in the Armada, because veteran policy is a policy of veterans, so the acting servicemen and their families. A separate thing I would like to say that painful issue is lack of status being taken account of people missed in actions and in captivity and difficult statuses. So these categories are not allowing families to get access. The ones which families of the veterans or fallen defenders have, and that makes some processes even more complicated. It makes this process even more difficult. So we shouldn't forget, and we have to understand that where a veteran is, they are self-motivated. We have to support or transform the system in the way for it to be working for the policy of opportunities. I would like to thank the association. I would like to thank my colleagues. I would like to thank UNICEF, who are piloting innovative tools in Armadas. And thank you very much for that. But first of all, I would like to thank our defenders, thanks to whom this meeting is possible. Glory to Armed Forces of Ukraine. And thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Katerina. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to invite Veniamin Sitov, the head of the platform Security ЖКХ, All-Ukrainian Association of ETC, the head of the Verkhovna Rada. Thank you. We are considering not the budget topic. We are talking about security and the future of Ramadas during martial law on the territory of Ukraine. All-Ukrainian Association of the Amalgamated Territorial Ramadas, we understand the importance of these challenges and undertakes the most efforts to resolve them. Before this, we have the program of energy independence of Ramadas. We have advocacy work being conducted in our Ramadas, and thanks to our European partners, we received not only international experience, we are taught how to take in account the needs of the children, families with children, and groups of elderly people. Besides that, we get real and material support for the third year in the framework of the memorandum as of 10th August 2025 between mnemonics and Amalgamated Ramadas. 33 Ramadas receive specialized mechanized vehicle. The recent events have shown that energy is not only economic, so it's the matter of survival of people and functioning of the critical infrastructure. When electricity disappears, water supply, heating supply, medicine, everything is not working, and therefore our Ramadas have to be at most energy efficient. In 2027-2029, we have three main objectives which require financing. First of all, that is we have to provide all the hospital water supply companies with backup energy systems. Second one is energy independence. We have to shift from the full dependence to the partial independence. We have to install the solar panels on the utility companies' buildings. The third one is saving energy and energy efficiency through thermodynamization of the buildings and energy management. We can decrease the expenditures for the energy by 25-30%. Separately from that, I would like to mention that this program is not just expenditure, that is also investment. We're planning to engage the state funds, international grants, and partner programs. Every revenue from the state budget can bring additional financing. Implementation of this program will give us a stable work of the critical infrastructure even during crises, decrease the energy dependence from the external suppliers, and increase security. So we have the opportunity not just to respond to these problems and not to be waiting for the crisis, but to be ready for it. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Veniamin, dear friends, dear colleagues. We're a bit out of time, and therefore I promised that we had questions and Q&A session, but the thing is that everyone who had to answer these questions, they are doing what the others have to be doing, and there is no one who has to answer this question. And I thought that I will ask them to give them the suggestions, and I heard them. I have taken down notes, and today we have the request for sustainability, predictability, for the address support, for the access to the registers, for the fair statistics, for the division of the protection. But that's not the issue of the budget declaration, flexibility to use the state budgets. And also I've heard the services, but I think that is something not about the budget declarations, but everyone who is a part of it, they have to know about it. Thank you once again for this. It is important for this to be sent to the government. That is our joint promise that the state strategy will be talking in the language of the ordinary family, and it's important for everyone to remember that childhood cannot be postponed, and the life cannot be postponed as well. Thank you very much for the participation, and thank you for seeing the life behind the numbers. Thank you very much. See you the next time.